The 18th of September of this year was a shocking day for this country. A number of people died. There are still conflicting reports about whether 3 or 4 people died. They died as a result of a catastrophic failure by Optus. And for this government to scramble now to bring in this bill on the 000 custodian, on recommendations that were made close to 2 years ago, is a disgrace. That is why I am calling on every senator to support an urgent Senate inquiry into the September Optus 000 outage when the vote occurs in the Senate tomorrow. Senator McGrath set out a very good history of the nightmare that we went through in Senate estimates, extracting information, extracting the truth about what happened. The ducking and weaving and deception from this government. And I would also name the department, and there's one official in particular in the department who for a number of hours led senators on a merry dance without giving straight answers as to when the department first knew about this, when the minister first knew about this, when the regulator first knew about this. And I can tell you right now, we are not impressed. And I would send a direct message to the Secretary of the department to pull your officials in order, that when they come before Senate estimates, we expect straight, clear, honest answers to our questions. We were told over and over again, oh, well, you know, on the Thursday when this happened, yes, there were a couple of emails sent, but they were sent to the wrong email address. And we could not get a straight answer about whether those 2 emails, including advice that welfare checks were still being conducted because of the outage, we could not get a straight answer for a couple of hours, and that is appalling. And then, when we finally get hold of those emails, we discover that they've gone to the minister's office on the Thursday. And yet we have the minister telling the Australian people in the House of Representatives, yes, I can confirm we were notified of the catastrophic outage until late— sorry, I'll say that again. Yes, I can confirm we were not notified of the catastrophic outage until late afternoon on Friday, the 19th of September. Well, that's just simply not true, because we now know that those emails went into the minister's office the day before on the Thursday afternoon. And so again I stress to the Secretary of the Department to please, when you come back before us again in Senate estimates in December, and hopefully when the Senate inquiry is established, we expect a much better performance than that. Every official, every minister is required to give clear and straight and concise answers to our questions, because this was a deadly outcome, and I too extend my sympathies to the families and friends and loved ones of those who died. As the initiator of the proposal to hold a Senate inquiry, and the vote will be held tomorrow, as I mentioned, we are determined to drag Optus executives before the Senate and demand answers. We are determined, and we hope that will happen next week. We also need to know whether Australians can ever again trust Optus to provide a 000 service. After misleading Australians about when her office first knew about the outage, Labor's hapless Minister for Communication, Minister Wells, must also appear before the inquiry. We will not tolerate any more ducking and weaving or deception. Now, while the Senate cannot compel a member of the House of Representatives to appear, it is incumbent on this minister to do the right thing in the national interest and give evidence. We deserve answers. Australians deserve the truth, the full truth and nothing but the truth. And in the terms proposed, which have been lodged and will appear on the notice paper tomorrow, the role of the minister in safeguarding the integrity, resilience and public confidence in the 000 system is central to our inquiry. And there is very good precedent for this. On a number of previous occasions under our government, ministers volunteered to appear before Senate inquiries. Mr Dutton, who was then the Minister for Home Affairs, appeared before the Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee, an inquiry into national security legislation. And he was very happy to clarify a number of operational matters concerning his portfolio and Australian Federal Police. Also, Mr Morrison, when he was the Minister for Immigration and Border Protection in 2014, also appeared before a Senate inquiry, the Senate Legal and Constitutional Affairs Committee, and this was an inquiry into legislation into migration and maritime powers, resolving the asylum legacy caseload. Now, of course, as I say, we cannot compel the minister to appear, but this minister today must confirm that she is prepared to front up to the inquiry. We are not going to tolerate anything less. And it is a joke. It is a joke that the minister thinks it's good enough to ask her own regulator, ACMA, the Australian Communications and Media Authority, which in so many respects reports to her, which is just one of the conflicts of interest. It's a joke that the regulator is inquiring into itself and others. That is untenable. And I will say this about the former Minister for Communications, Ms Rowland. At least she had the decency to set up an independent inquiry, the Bean Review, which made some very, very good recommendations. Of course, recommendations that were not acted on, and many of those recommendations, which are in the form of new enhanced 000 rules, are still not in effect, and I'll say more about that in a moment. So it is appalling when it is clear the regulator is implicated in what happened on that day, on the next day, and in its governance of the 000 service. This is an essential service for all Australians. Every Australian needs to know that when they pick up the phone and dial 000, they will get the help they need from the fire brigade, from the ambulance, from police. And I have to particularly condemn the minister and ACMA because there were very important recommendations which stemmed out of our previous Senate inquiry and also the Bean Review to enhance the emergency call service rules. And would you believe, and they are rules known as the Telecommunications Emergency Call Service Amendment Determination 2025 number 1. They were made in April of this year. But extraordinarily, these rules are still not in place. The telcos were given 6 months to implement these rules. And of course, In September, 3 or 4 people died. So these rules, just imagine, we don't know because we don't know all the facts. But these rules are meant to ensure that telecommunications carriers do a better job, are more accountable. These rules include that carriers must wilt a mobile base station if it has lost connectivity, so that those calls via that mobile tower can be carried by another network. The carriers are obliged to take steps to ensure that their facilities do not impede emergency call CAMPON functionality. Providers must test that emergency calls originating on their network can be delivered to the emergency call person, that's 000 or 112, including when CAMPON is used. Carriers must share real-time network information with specified entities, which include emergency services organisations, which is currently not the case. After a major outage, there must be a full report, and before there is a system upgrade, the new rules provide that carriers must submit management plans ahead of proposed changes to show that where there is a risk of detrimental impact to emergency call delivery, the carriers will have the appropriate measures in place to ensure 000 doesn't fail. There are a number of other rules as well contained in this instrument, which of course was made an instrument in April, but these rules don't come into effect on the 1st of November. That is a complete and utter disgrace. What was the minister doing? She's ran this bill through at the last minute. It should have happened last year. And after ACMA ran its consultation on these new enhanced 000 rules, these should have come into effect straight away. Now, of course, the carriers are saying, oh, we need so much more time. Well, no, they don't need more time when there is an outage to tell emergency services. And I do recall the outrage of the South Australian Premier, who was also in the dark when we had that scrambled Friday night press conference by the CEO of Optus. And he was outraged because services in South Australia, and I also assume in Western Australia, were not told, state governments were not told, and the whole thing was a fiasco. And why is it that when these rules came into place, really important recommendations of the Bean Review, also recommendations that were very much supported by the previous Senate inquiry, why did the minister accept the fact that it would take 6 months? We need to put the fire to the feet of these carriers. We need to say, if you are going to have the responsibility to provide such critical infrastructure as telephone services, which is so vital, then we need to see you do the job properly. And I am really pleased, and I do also want to commend Senator Hanson-Young, who is co-sponsoring this notice of motion to set up this inquiry, along with Senators Dean Smith and Cadell. So the Greens have been of course, very, very supportive of this initiative. But we are not going to let the government, the regulator, the minister or Optus or any other carrier off the hook. We are going to go through this with a fine-tooth comb. And we are also putting on the table the need to bring mobile phone roaming into this country, so that if you don't have a mobile connection, a service, particularly when you're a regional area through one carrier, you can then use another carrier's mobile tower. It's a disgrace that domestic customers are barred from mobile roaming in this country. So I look forward to the Senate's support to that motion tomorrow.
Thank you, Senator Henderson.